In the name of Allah, the Gracious, the Merciful, peace be upon you and His blessings.
I am Hala Hassan, a visual artist. I've worked in the field of visual arts for a long time in Syria and also in art education, originally in Syria, and then in the UAE, specifically Abu Dhabi. It is my great pleasure and honor today to participate in an educational workshop as part of the National Creative Program, which is affiliated with the Department of Education and Knowledge.
This workshop, God willing, will be comprised today of a diverse collection of multimedia components. It is fundamentally rooted in the realm of multimedia, specifically what we call mixed media, and we'll be utilizing a wide array of materials, and with God's grace, it will prove to be a truly novel and distinctive experience for all of us today.
The main themes of the Watani Ibda'i program for this current year have been carefully derived from the family program, which was successfully implemented this year across the United Arab Emirates. Specifically, there are 7 distinct themes that were thoughtfully chosen as integral components of the Watani Ibda'i initiative. These particular themes are directly and intrinsically connected to the core objectives and principles of the family program. As we said, the family program was chosen because the family is the fundamental pillar for building society and for solidifying the national identity within society. These themes are the Emirati family, the family and nature, the family's dwelling, Emirati role models and leaders, social practices, the family's role in preserving traditional crafts, and the family's role in preserving the Arabic language, which is the mother tongue of the United Arab Emirates. Now, through these important themes we'll be exploring in our workshop today, we will select 2 primary themes, or perhaps just 2, and I'll be adding a third one to them. The very first theme we'll delve into is the unique and cherished Emirati family, and the second main theme will be a fascinating blend of family life and nature alongside traditional crafts. So these are 3 main points, or rather axes. Our workshop will be centered around these 3 specific axes. Now, after we've clearly defined the intellectual content, what exactly is the second step? The second step involves selecting the artistic approach and the technical methods we'll use. Are there various different approaches available? Absolutely, there are indeed many distinct artistic approaches. These methods and artistic style can be realistic, it can be abstract, symbolic, impressionistic, cubist, and so on. There are many artistic styles that I can use in my artistic work. Now, I've changed the methods. I've chosen the artistic style. After the style, I need to choose the artistic technique I'll use. So, what is the artistic technique? Do I want my artwork to be, for example, a drawing, a charcoal drawing with a pencil, with colored pencils, sketching, painting? What is a specific field that I will be working in? What are my choices for the artistic domain? So if I have the opportunity to choose, it could be sketching or painting, or perhaps collage, or it might even be decoupage, or it could potentially be mixed media, just like our workshop today. For today, we've specifically chosen to combine multiple different media. The multimedia materials we'll be using today are we'll be using gizmonite material and resin material, along with various other materials such as gold leaf, wires, shaping with metal wires, and things like shells, for example, and so on. We'll also be using many acrylic colors, which we will come back to and mention later. Now, I have chosen the technique. I've selected the artistic techniques. What materials will I be using? I mean, for example, I've chosen my workshop to be painting. So what specific colors will I use in this workshop? Will I be using watercolors or acrylic paints, or perhaps oil paints? Based on this particular decision, I will then proceed to select the appropriate tools that I must employ. So when I choose watercolors, I must use brushes that are suitable for them, and a proper paper surface, for example, or cardboard, my apologies. No, I mean special watercolor paper and so forth. So then I determine exactly what materials and tools I will be using. Then the next stage, or the 4th step, is to now set possibilities for my artistic work. These possibilities, the artificial intelligence program can support and help me achieve even more. I mean, when I personally execute this piece of art directly onto the canvas, it might not turn out as I'd hoped, and I might not like it. And this is something we very often encounter in the classroom setting, specifically during the art lesson itself, where the student begins their artistic creation and they have a very particular vision in their mind that they are eager to convey. but he comes to the conclusion that he doesn't quite know where to begin, or indeed how it will all eventually conclude. And he's never really been satisfied with the initial steps he's taken. Consequently, there are times when he simply doesn't wish to finish the artistic piece at all, choosing instead to abandon the entire project. So to prevent us from reaching this particular stage, a student would use artificial intelligence. For example, a program like Google Gemini, which I personally use. I provide this program with all the preceding data that I've already mentioned. What specific intellectual content do I want? What is the main theme I wish to focus on, for instance? I will describe to it in detail exactly what I want. For example, I want the father, mother, and children to appear, and the daughter wearing specific clothes. All the details I desire, I will mention to the program, what techniques I will use, what colors I will use, and so on. It will then give me many possibilities. From these possibilities, I can choose one of them based on the given data, or I can modify them from the start. So I can write to the program again, for example, no, modify this specific element for me. I want this particular element to be different. I want the colors to be different. And so I impart to the program or give to it what I personally desire, because this is my own artistic work. Now, after selecting all the possibilities and then choosing the specific one that I truly want, I can finally begin to create the artwork. I'll start bringing it to life step by step. Now, I have a complete and clear vision. What is the core idea? What exactly is the content? What are the specific materials, the techniques employed, the overall style, and so forth? I can now easily begin to create my artistic work. The final stage I always recommend is exchanging criticism and analysis among students so that I can also critique my own work. I can observe the work from a distance and critique it myself. For instance, no, I might decide to change this particular element. Perhaps the colors could be arranged in a different way, for example. I might want to add something. In other words, I don't depend on artificial intelligence as the final solution. I can always add more if I sense, for example, that I could incorporate any additional element. I can certainly add it to this final version that I have arrived at. And so I expect the student to be able to produce an innovative artistic work from their own effort and their own creativity.
So now we have determined what the idea and the content of the artwork are. We have determined what the techniques and the artistic style are. And I have determined what the materials and the tools I will be using are.
I will be presenting here some of the models that center around the family-related themes that have been proposed through an innovative national program. Well, the very first painting here actually depicts the beautiful old traditional Emirati dwelling. And for this particular painting, I've used a variety of techniques or natural materials. I utilize jasmonite material, applying the terrazzo technique specifically for the window and this particular section. And of course, I incorporated acrylic paints. I also made use of natural sand sourced directly from the environment and employed stencils along with body printing techniques. Well, and of course, I used resin, two different types of resin casting and another resin for coating the resin casting here, specifically in these decorative units, and also for the final protective coating of the entire piece.
Well, why do we use resin to coat a painting? There are two very important reasons for this. The first reason is that it can give the painting a beautiful luster and glassy, polished look. And it also enhances the colors, giving them more vibrancy. The second reason is honestly preserving materials, especially in the field of mixed media. The materials that we add to the painting, for example, this particular painting depicts pearl diving, which is a very famous and well-known traditional craft in the United Arab Emirates. So all these numerous materials that have been incorporated into the artistic piece, if without resin, they are seriously threatened with damage, detachment, or even complete disintegration. Resin provides them with significantly greater stability, adds a more profound beauty, and binds all the elements together much more securely and effectively.
In this painting, the diver is clearly visible,
and he is attempting to reach the pearl
alongside a collection of fish from the marine environment. And you can observe here some fragments, some pieces of terrazzo or jasmonite integrated with metal wires for shaping.
Welcome back, everyone. Today we're going to begin by discussing the jasmonite material and also the terrazzo technique, as we briefly touched upon earlier. The jasmonite material is part of the resin family, and resin itself is a resinous substance that is extracted from coniferous trees. This material generally is unsafe for use except for specific types. The ones with a water-based medium, all of them are safe and environmentally friendly. Jasmonite is one of them. Of course, jasmonite is a material. It's composed of two components, like almost every resin family. It's made of two parts, a powder material and a liquid material, which acts as the hardener. It's always made from a powder and a liquid. So the mixing method, it's really, really important for anyone who's using any kind of resin or jasmonite to pay very close attention to the specific mixing ratio for that particular product, because it truly varies quite a bit from one product to another. Okay, so regarding the jasmonite product that I have right here with me, its specific ratio is 3:1. That means 3 parts of the powder and then 1 part of the hardener or the liquid component. We will also be using some special colored inks that are specifically designed for jasmonite. We will also be using containers or vessels for mixing. And of course, we'll definitely need a precise scale, a very accurate scale for weighing, because any mistake in using the correct ratios will certainly lead to the object or the shape not drying properly. So what are the various techniques that one can effectively utilize with jasmonite? It's possible to pour and cast 3-dimensional sculptural forms, which are already inherently very beautiful and quite sophisticated. You can also blend different colors, for instance, using multiple shades within a single piece, or even employ the pouring techniques, such as pouring various colors together. We can use the terrazzo method. Today, we're going to talk about the terrazzo method, which essentially consists of small pieces of gizmonite itself, but we've specifically shaped them into tiny fragments, and then we cast them together with gizmonite that is either white or completely uncolored. All right, how should I begin? I'll start by reiterating, as I mentioned earlier, that the specific ratios we're using are 3:1. 3 parts of the powder and 1 part of the hardener. First, I'll start by turning on the scale, and I need to make sure it's completely zeroed. Now, I'll find the weight of the cup, which is approximately 7.6.
Now, for example, I'm going to use a 3:1 ratio. I'll be using 30 parts of the powder and 10 parts of
Of course, I'll be adding it to the weight that I currently have, which is 7.5. So the total amount of powder will then become 37.5. This is how we'll do it.
Oh, I've already passed the age of 37.
All right, yes, it's 37.
All right, then, now from the liquid, I will be using just 10 units. Thus 10 will then be added to the 37.5 that we currently have, which means the total amount will be 47.5 grams. Of course, I also have the option to pour the liquid into a separate container and then proceed to mix them thoroughly. Because I utilize it quite frequently, I've become quite adept at knowing precisely how to weigh it. However, if there's any uncertainty regarding the exact measurement, I could use 10 of this plus the weight of the cup, which is 7.5, so that would total 17.5. Precisely, just a very small quantity. I'm merely serving as a temporary model, only for the time being, until something more permanent is established. It's definitely preferable that I add the powder to the liquid. Why? Because the powder completely dissolves, whereas the liquid, some drops might be lost through in the cup. Now, I really need to mix this, but not for too long, perhaps for just about 2 minutes, certainly no more than that. So what I'm going to be doing right now is cutting the terrazzo. I'll be performing the terrazzo cut immediately, and then I'll be preparing a different mixture for... And it's actually possible, by the way, to combine colors. It's a well-known fact to every art instructor that the 3 colors, yellow, red, and blue, are the fundamental primary colors. So from these basic primary colors, a very large and diverse range of shades can be created. So I could mix, I could blend blue with yellow, and that would give me green. And red with yellow, that produces the color orange. And blue with red, that results in purple. Now, the main advantage of gizmonite is that it dries very quickly, which means that right after I finish mixing the exact quantity, I have to immediately place it into the mold or put it into the specific spot where I intend for it to go. Now, I don't want to put it into the mold. I want to put it in this the bag. I'm going to try and gently pat it down, working it until I achieve a layer that has just the right amount of thinness, not too thick at all, so that it will break apart quite easily for me. All right, this is going to take us somewhere around 10 to 15 minutes to fully dry. We're going to work on something else while this is drying. The result that I will get after completing this particular stage, of course, this will dry out completely and become a very solid slice or a firm piece, and it can be easily broken apart by hand, even immediately, so I can then break it into the exact size I wish for. And if, for instance, I wanted a very specific form from it, I could simply pour it into a mold, or rather into the exact mold that I desire. For example, sometimes I might have a mold shaped like a door, or perhaps a flower, or truly any specific design that I wish for. I can then pour it directly into that mold to achieve the precise result I'm looking for. Now, at this very moment, to properly prepare the terrazzo, I need to grind and then produce a specific collection, a set of small fragments or tiny pieces from the gizmoni material, exactly in this particular manner. I will then store them carefully in various containers so I can easily use them whenever they are required. Now, for the next stage. All right, I'm going to be waiting for this to finish, but considering that I've already prepared this part before, I will go back and apply the floor's color once again. The floor color, the one that is currently without any color, I'll create the gizmoni layer, the one where I'll be adding the terrazzo. I'll do that one more time. Okay. I'm going to double the amount now because the mold actually takes up quite a bit more space. So I'll use, we just use 30, but I'll use 60, 93 times the amount.
90 milligram.
Of course, I always make sure to add the weight of the cup itself.
What I mean is 97.5.
It is generally understood that for 90 grams of powder, you should be using 30 grams of the liquid.
This means with the weight of the cup, it's 37.
All right, we could, potentially add some color to it if we really wanted to. But first, let me just get it all mixed up properly. I must make sure the mixture, ensure it's blended perfectly so there are no granules whatsoever. Now I can add a color or not. I mean, I'll add, for instance, a little bit of yellow. Now, at this particular stage, if my objective is to create a specific piece of terrazzo, I will then proceed to add the previously prepared terrazzo scraps. I will incorporate them based on the specific colors that I desire. For instance, I might choose to add a small amount of green. Maybe we can add yellow. This material needs to be applied within 3 minutes in a process because it can dry very quickly.
All right, the second stage is now.
Pour the mixture or the blend into the mold, the actual mold.
In this way.
Now, it's also important to allow it to sit and wait for approximately 15 to 20 minutes until it has completely dried out, and then we can proceed to carefully extract the shape. It then needs sanding or rubbing it with sandpaper or just sandpaper. We first select a coarse grit paper, then a finer one, then an even finer one, and so on to smooth and soften the piece. Then, because the texture or the grain that has these particles, it doesn't show without engraving. It doesn't appear clearly. I have to go back and engrave or go back and sand so that the texture is clear. Now, upon extracting the piece or the product from the mold, we immediately submerge it in water. And why do we do this? Because the water will significantly enhance the rigidity of the gizmony material. It will boost its firmness and render it much stronger. And even while it remains immersed in the water, it's possible for me to carefully remove it. So this is the finished product.
This is the terrazzo style. And in this particular piece, I also made sure to incorporate a second technique, which is the pouring method, or specifically pouring the colors. It's done in precisely the same manner, but instead of just adding the terrazzo fragments, I add a certain amount of a different color or with the specific colors that I want. I then add it to the solution that is completely colorless. And I mix it, and then I pour it immediately before I give it a final mix, meaning I just mix it a little bit, and that's all. This is the pouring technique, which is familiar to most artists and also to many teachers. And this here is the final product.
It can be utilized in three-dimensional sculptural pieces, or it might be incorporated into various artistic endeavors such as paintings, drawings, photography, or even other forms of painting and so on, or mixed media.
But an important note to consider, if this is going to be used in an artistic piece, it's preferable that it doesn't exceed 1 or 2 millimeters in thickness, meaning it shouldn't be overly thick. And that's one thing to keep in mind. Also, it shouldn't be applied to a very large area of the artwork or the canvas itself. It's possible to use it on a wooden surface, for instance. You can certainly spread it out on wood. However, it shouldn't be used on canvas because canvas is a fabric, and as a fabric, it could crack quite significantly. Therefore, it's not advisable to use it on very large areas. If I'm working with canvas, I typically use smaller pieces, but if I need a larger surface area, then I might use wood or any other hard, rigid material.
All right, so now the gesso night, which we applied just a little while ago, has completely dried. We can now easily break it apart directly with our hands, just like this, to obtain all the small pieces that I'll be able to use in my artistic work in this particular fashion.
I could even use it for the mosaics, you know. Okay, well, I suppose that's acceptable.
I've got what I needed. I keep them either in a bag like this, or I keep them in containers like this, so I can always use them in my art projects.
Now we'll be performing together the technique, or rather the stencil printing technique. Stencil printing is very, very useful in our artistic works. It can be used to add decorations or to add some embellishments, for example, or patterns to the artistic piece. To implement this specific technique, you can use gesso. Gesso is a material quite similar to acrylic paint, but it's specially processed. It can be sometimes much denser, or in some varieties, it might be quite rough to the touch, while others are perfectly smooth. So this is a smooth, regular gesso, quite similar to acrylic paint, but it possesses a slightly denser consistency. We are going to be using a stencil sheet, which you can find quite easily and abundantly available in the market. Now, I've already prepared a very simple background on this canvas panel. We can now proceed to apply the gesso. It is highly desirable that it remains absolutely constant. The stencil needs to be completely stable on the canvas before we begin. I can use a palette knife, the acrylic paint knife, or perhaps I could use a brush, specifically a stamp brush, which is designed for printing. So the method now is to take a good amount of gesso in this particular fashion, and then I will begin to carefully place it on
the stencil. I'm going to try as much as I can.
The stencil didn't move at all. I can, of course, secure it with the tape. Before we begin,
now, it's better not to lift it right away because the colors might shift, but I'll lift it now so they can be seen.
This is the way that it's shaped.
So now I've successfully transferred this intricate design onto the actual art piece. Following this, I have the option to, for example, add some vibrant colors to it, painting it, or alternatively, I could simply choose to leave it precisely as it is, or perhaps I might even consider gilding it with a beautiful golden acrylic paint, for instance. I can paint it with golden acrylic, or we can apply gold leaf. We'll soon see how to use gold leaf. So this is the stencil technique on gesso. And now to use gold leaf or metallic leaf, we're using a special adhesive specifically designed for metal leaf because it effectively prevents any oxidation. And at the same time, there's a particular type that actually combines both glue and varnish, which is even better for permanently fixing the color in place. So I'm going to apply just a little bit of this adhesive right here in this manner.
Now, it is possible for me to make use of a small brush.
For example, I want to really make sure to reinforce this particular area because it contains some small empty spaces, and perhaps in this very spot I might want to place some gold leaf, so I will proceed to apply the adhesive.
In this way, now to apply the glue, I can use a brush. Sorry, not the paper. I can use a small brush. I mean, it's extremely light, so it's possible to
Okay, you can also use the full gold leaf like this. It comes in this form. And it's also possible for me to cut a small piece from it, depending on the exact area where I want to apply the gold leaf.
Naturally, it's going to stick only in the specific area where I applied the glue. For smaller spaces, it is recommended to use this wallpaper. After completing this process, we then you move it with the brush in this particular fashion, so we can effectively get rid of any unwanted gilded sections. Naturally, I have to close these areas. Well, it's possible to cover up those specific areas that are not desired. For example, the ones I don't want to have. I can simply cover them with acrylic paints once again.
This area I'm supposed to, I mean, it's meant to be part of my responsibility.
I won't be using gluing paper on this one. By the way, this particular piece, I actually got it from an AI. The AI program provided it to me in a slightly different form, and I then made some changes to it. I altered the background, and I also modified the overall shape. I didn't want it to be, a full face. I mean, I really wanted to, I had a very distinct and personal vision for it. So it's always possible to modify the painting or the artistic creation that's been produced by AI to suit the artist's preference, or indeed the individual who is actually making the artwork. Okay, so this is now the gilding stage that we're working on. I'm going to thoroughly clean this specific area right here using acrylic, and then I'll show you the final result. For the purpose of crafting accessories, it's quite possible to make use of metal wires. Well, metal wires are, of course, widely available. You'll find some types are manufactured from aluminum, while others are specifically made from copper material. Their characteristic color is often a rich reddish copper hue. Furthermore, there are options available that are coated aluminum, and some come in a bright silver color offered in many different sizes. It's always preferable to use the softer type of material for the shaping process, meaning it shouldn't be overly rigid so that I can easily work with it and form it into the desired shape. I will be using, for this, two pairs of pliers, one specifically for shaping the form and giving it its final appearance, and the other one for cutting the metal for the actual cutting process. All right, I'm going to use the exact same method now, the technique of wrapping with gold-colored material to create some accessories. Perhaps I could begin by cutting, for example, some pieces. Of course, if the sizes are perfectly equal, then shapes must be cut. Or measurements that are precisely equal, and if that's not possible, then it might turn out to be longer or shorter depending on the All right, now the method for shaping this is incredibly simple. There's absolutely nothing complicated about it. I can begin to wrap it, but the initial part requires these pliers, then you just continue wrapping it.
This wire, it's quite sturdy. I mean, its gauge might actually be more than 1 millimeter, so shaping it is proving to be a little bit stiff. I could try to work with it using just my hands.
Exactly, just like this.
Now, I'm going to attach it firmly onto the panel. I might have secured it using this very specific adhesive.
Or you could use like a hot glue gun, depending on your preference. But for speed, I'll be using
So this is the final shape we're aiming for. Now, with the necklace completed, we're going to move on to crafting the matching earrings or perhaps some hoops. For this next step, I'll be using a specific type of wire, one that's noticeably thinner and much softer, approximately 7/10 of a millimeter in thickness, and I'll be cutting a specific length from it. I'll be employing a completely different technique for these, which is primarily twisting. I'm going to bend it in this specific shape. Can I go back and make a second comment?
Then he went and wrapped it up until the braid can be seen.
Is the shape once.
Let us now return to, now we will turn our attention to the resin material. Well, resin as a material is essentially a resinous substance that is extracted, as we've previously discussed, from coniferous trees. And there are a vast number of shapes and types, truly a great many. Now, most of these types possess a distinct odor, a very pungent and intense smell. Therefore, it is always, and I mean always, strongly advised to utilize all necessary protective measures when working with resin, especially the chemical-based resin.
Some specific types of resin, such as jesmonite, for example, are formulated using a completely water-based medium. This makes them highly recommended for use with students, primarily because they are incredibly safe and, importantly, very environmentally friendly. In fact, you can even use them for crafting kitchenware, meaning they are perfectly suitable for everyday household items. As for the chemical resin that is used, the chemical one, it is always preferred that the teacher handles it and supervises the students from a distance, you know. Or, as we discussed, the water-based medium should be used instead. There is also a type of resin, one of the kinds of resin, that doesn't need any mixing or any kind of preparation. It can be used directly straight from its container. That is the UV resin. This UV resin, it dries by exposing it to ultraviolet rays or even sunlight if the rays are direct and strong enough. However, it's always recommended to use a dedicated device that generates UV light. This particular type of resin is best used for accessories or small pieces only. So after the piece has been produced, or rather after it's been prepared through casting, we can then place it under this specific device. This is so it can properly dry and solidify. And it's also highly recommended that it be flipped over to the other side as well, so that it hardens completely from both sides and becomes fully ready. Okay, this is quite safe for students, you see, because they won't have to assemble any components or measure and use specific mixing ratios or anything like that. So it's much simpler to prepare and also very safe. It's enough for him to wear gloves, and a mask during the preparation process. The second type that I will be working with now is the chemical type. For this resin, we must always follow the mixing ratio indicated on the package because it varies significantly from one package to another. Now, the mixing ratio I have for the resin and the hardener is 2:1. This means I'll be using 2 parts of the resin and 1 part of the hardener. Okay, it's pretty much the same way we worked with gessomite.
Now, the purpose of the resin today, right now, is to cover or to create a protective layer for the painting of the Emirati woman that we had just finished working on and completed the shaping. So I'm going to start working on the resin now. This one here weighs 7.5.
I'm going to set the value at 60%.
From the age of 13?
127, that is quite enough.
Now let's take half of the total quantity. We have 127, but we must subtract the 7 grams for the cook's weight. That leaves us with exactly 120. Half of that specific amount is 60, therefore I will use 60 from the hardener.
We'll need a full 3 minutes, specifically between 3 and 5 minutes, to ensure proper stable fixation.
We'll observe as we continue to stir this that the color will change because a chemical reaction is taking place. Of course, at the very beginning, it will give off a slight color.
It's a little bit blurry right now, but it will clear up later on.
This type is a crystal type, because the one that has crystal written on it, that means it's extremely transparent. Its transparency is very good. I'm going to get this all prepared. I need to put some tape around the edge so we don't spill anything on the floor. When you're pouring the resin over the entire surface of your panel, it's always highly recommended that you apply tape along all the edges precisely in this way, to prevent the resin from dripping down onto the edges of the panel, which would then cause a lot of mess and problems. However, some people actually prefer the edges to also have resin. In this situation, it's possible to upload the artwork to on a raised base like this, for example. He lifts it up high, and he will need to try every now and then periodically to remove the resin that's on the edges. Or after he completely finishes the entire artwork, it's possible that he might cut them off using a special tool or a specific device.
For covering the resin, I mean specifically.
After I'm completely finished, I'll definitely need to go back and apply pressure to the tape to ensure that there isn't no possibility of any material leaking out.
I want to keep its characteristics at a high level naturally.
It's always recommended, for example, if I intend to create a board that exceeds 1 millimeter in thickness, that I should apply it in multiple distinct layers, which means I would pour it on several separate occasions. Now, this resin, as you can clearly see, is quite full of bubbles at the moment. I'll need to wait for a little while, trying to make sure that all of these bubbles, they eventually come out. And even if they don't completely disappear, there's actually another method we can use. It involves this specific device, which is called a fire gun, or it basically emits a fiery flame. That can certainly help, but of course, this particular tool is strictly for the instructor's use only.
It's absolutely out of the question to give this to the student. The teacher, after the work is completed, might try to remove the bubbles on their own.
At the conclusion of this artistic workshop, I truly hope that it has proven to be both beneficial and enjoyable for everyone, and I also hope that it has been very clear.
We produced 3 artistic outputs, or rather 3 distinct artistic products, that speak about the traditional Emirati family homes, and about pearl diving, that ancient deeply rooted traditional craft, and when the father would embark on his journey for pearl diving, searching for those precious pearls. And regarding the active role of Emirati women in reviving our heritage and our folk heritage and traditional clothing such as the burqa and various types of women's jewellery, I truly hope that this will be of great benefit, and I also hope that we will see artistic works from our dear students presented in the best possible way. Thank you so much.